So if I was to tell you that today I'm painting salamanders, what would you think? For those of you new to this universe, you're probably thinking, why is this guy painting lizards? Whereas the more experienced of you, you're more than likely slapping on the sunscreen as we speak. One of the founding chapters of the Space Marines, hailing from a death world that's basically like going to the sun and sprinkling a few rocks on top for decoration. So if you want to bring those little lizards onto your tabletop, where would we start? Well, first of all, I'm not going to show you all the base coating steps, as everybody's got a different way of doing these, and same with the guns. I'll show you how to do the effects, but the actual base of the weapons is totally down to your personal choice. I've base coated this guy with Warpstone glow all over the armour panels, and then I've base coated the leather areas with white, and then the joints between the panels and all the metal areas, they've just got a solid black base. You can see I've put the transfers on already, but make sure you put them on before you handle any of the glows. Now it's time for our first painting layer. You're going to want to get a nice fine bristled brush. I'm going to go with Moot green here and just paint a thin line around all those edges of the armour panels, just to highlight and emphasise where light would be hitting all those surfaces, whilst also adding a couple of scratches here and there. You've probably seen this done 100 times before, but my method's actually got a couple of slight tweaks compared to most, so it could be worth taking note of how I do this. As I'm sure some of you are probably thinking I'm a little bit strange for doing all the highlights before any of the dirty washes, but this wasn't an oversight. I'm now going to grab some Nuln Oil and paint that into all the recesses and crevices on the model, creating the look of shadows and really bringing out depth. And once it's all dry, you can see that's really popping now, and especially on this leg here. You can see how that Nuln Oil shadow has also softened that Moot green highlight on those edges. It really gave the illusion of shadows being cast onto the panels that run underneath one another. So that's why we highlight the things first and then give everything a wash of Nuln Oil afterwards. So now we've got all those chips painted in the light green, we're going to need to add some extra damage to the larger scratches that run over the edges. So using black, all we're going to do is just paint a thin scratch just above any areas where we have that Moot green running in from the edge of a panel. And that black will just simply break up the shape on that edge, giving the illusion of a deep scratch. But try and keep these as small as possible, because if they're too big, you're going to be creating that Borderlands art style without even meaning to. For soldiers floating through the galaxy, they sure like a lot of leather, don't they? Now, I'm not going to explain this part too much. Basically, I've painted all those leather pouches with Snakebite Leather contrast paint. And that just kind of does all the work for you. If you're going to buy any contrast paint ever, this is the one I'd recommend. Now, salamanders are a legion of super soldiers, all created from a gene seed from their Primarch Vulcan. Really nice guy apparently. Now, every soldier containing his DNA has developed his carbon black skin and vivid red eyes. So to paint that unique skin tone, first of all we're going to base coat his head with Skavenblight Dinge all over. And one thing I've never understood is, why does everybody save the eyes, the hardest part on any mini, until right at the very end when you've got no room for error? Surely it makes much more sense to do them at this stage, as then, should you make a mess and paint a 4 foot wide eyeball, just go back in with your base coat, sharpen up around that eyeball, and you'll have much better eyes every single time. As the video slogan says, impress without the stress. And to add some depth into this face, we're going to go back in with our Nuln Oil once again. And this time, just wash it all over the head. Be a little careful around the eyes now. You want it to sit around that eyeball, but make sure it doesn't pull about and totally drown it out. We're painting salamanders here, not Gene Simmons. Just clean up any areas you feel pulled a little bit too heavily, back with that Skavenblight Dinge. Again, just leave the Nuln Oil still in the shadows. And then our first highlight on this face is with Dawnstone. With a little bit on your brush, just layer up all those raised points, just like the cheeks, the nose and his brow, but also leave areas of that Skavenblight behind just to give you a smooth blend from the dark shadows into the light. And then the final highlight we're going to apply on the skin is just a thin layer of Celestra grey, just on the very tips of the high points you highlighted on your previous layer. So again, that's the tips of the nose, points on the eyebrows, points on the cheeks and the chin. All that's left to do is simply one last wash of Nuln Oil, and that's simply just to blend in all those highlights and then soften everything whilst also darkening that skin tone as a whole, just to make everything a little bit closer to that carbon black we're aiming for. Right, we got there. You need to make sure you have everything painted to a level you're happy with, because now it's time for the good bit. Oh yeah. Now this is the reason you all clicked on the video. Nobody's here to watch me paint a leg green. So the first of the effects I'm going to show you is a glowing hot sledgehammer. Imagine a futuristic space blacksmith, where he would have a self-heating power hammer, right? Now all of these glows are going to have the same colour recipe, and that's going to start off with a white base coat over black. Now you can choose to dry brush this, but whatever method you use, just make sure that the head of the hammer is solid white when you're finished. And then we're going to be making a mix of 3 parts game ink yellow to 1 part red. Now the recipe's not critical, just get roughly that mix and you'll be all good. Just make a warm fiery orange to tint that white and give you that orange heat look. You can see I got a little overspray on the shoulder pad, but I'm not too bothered because that'll all add to the effect. Now in reality, I got a feeling that having a flaming bonfire on your shoulders isn't the best of ideas, but it wins a lot of points for cool factor. Now this will feel like we're switching back and forth, but it's for a reason. We're going to go back in with our white now, and this time we're just going to base colour that torch on the backpack of this marine here. Just colour it all white, and then you need to assemble your mini fully, putting his arm and head back on. We did this part separate first, just to make sure we didn't paint his face or his hammer by mistake when colouring in that flame. But now, aiming from where the beacon is, you just want to dust on a glow all around the perimeter of that torch, catching the backpack, the back of his head and shoulders, just to represent light fanning out from that flame source. And while we've still got white in the airbrush, just give each face of that hammer a little coating, just to give the impression of the hammer being hotter in the core and cooler towards the outside corners. Don't worry too much if the pattern isn't perfect. Really hot materials tend to sort of marble in appearance anyway. Now pay attention to these steps in particular, because we're going to do this in a specific order, and it has to be done in this order to be effective. Now first of all, you just want to tint those white areas you've just painted on the hammer with a coat of game ink yellow. Just really bring that warmth out. Once you're happy with all that is coated on the hammer, add a drop or two of red ink. Depending on how much you have in your pot, just make sure you've got that rough 3:1 ratio we've been getting earlier. Don't stir it. Then you want to spray all over the flames on that backpack torch, coating the whole thing as quick as you can with the first yellow layer. Keep spraying. As the red and yellow start to mix, your airbrush will change from spraying yellow ink to that orange mix, and it'll start to pool and blend in all manner of ways, giving you gorgeous gradients from yellow to orange, perfect for flame effects. Don't be scared if it pools, that's what we're looking for. You want thicker orange pools and thinner yellow edges. Then once you're happy with your flames and your orange is mixed nicely into the cup, it's just time to tint all that white overspray on the backpack into that warm glow of the fire. So just tint all those areas with your orange ink mix. We're on to the final 2 steps on this effect, and this guy actually. You just need to dab a little white paint into the centres of those yellow patches on the hammer, and after applying it, just give it a little press with your fingertip just to soften it and give that slightly marbled look. And then using the same white, just paint little licks of light onto the edges of the tips of those flames just to sharpen the shapes up before tinting those licks with more yellow ink. And an optional extra step is to add dabs of black to the edges of the hammer faces, just to simulate bits of molten impurities burning into the metal. And that is your main salamander painted, complete with burning torch and burning hot weapon. And I've got plenty more to show you, such as this. a technique developed by the late custom artist Mike LaValle. True Flame took the hot rod and custom world by storm, and if a salamander was to have his guns commissioned to anybody, I'm sure they would have chose Mike. So to start this effect off, we're going to have to make a bit of a mask. You can see here I've got a piece of old cardboard, and all I've done is just cut a square out of the centre and then followed one of the edges off the side just so it splits apart easily. You just want to wrap that around the gun like so, just to give you a nice mask to protect the rest of the mini. So the first painting step on this effect is just to get a really nice fine detail brush and just paint in some little vertical strokes going upwards. You don't have to shape them to be hot rod flames or anything like that, just little vertical curvy strokes to represent fire will be perfect. When you're happy with a layer of those, with white in your airbrush this time, or a dry brush if you're going to go that way about it, just spray over the bottom edge of the shield just to let that overspray glow blend those flame licks into the base of the fire. And then simply this background layer just wants tinting that same orange mix we've been using all over the flame effects once again. Once you're happy with that, you want to do all those exact processes once again, but doing your flame licks and glow a little lower down this time, just to leave the orange flames showing in the background. And this time, instead of tinting them our orange mix, we're just going to tint everything with the yellow ink all over. And that's that effect done. Now it's not the same technique that's used on the hot rods and True Fire, but this simple method works perfect on such a small scale. Okay, so you've hopefully seen me do plasma glow on some of my other videos, and this one's nothing out of the ordinary compared to the others. As always, we're going to base coat over all the coils on our gun with white first, and then let the overspray fog out that glow onto the surrounding edges and surfaces. And as I've shown you for every technique in this video, once again, our first tinting layer is going to be that flame orange mixture we created. Just put it all over everywhere where the white glow has reached out. Then, with a fine detailed brush, just highlight over each of those coils, giving you a nice bright base to show the source of that warm glow. Final step on this plasma glow is to just tint those white coils with game ink yellow once again. And that is a flame coloured plasma glow complete. Real simple, just 3 steps is all it takes, but it's just so effective. And that is how I painted my salamanders. We got there. Tons of tips in this video for all kinds of fire effects. I know I said I was going to make a shorter video this week, but things were pushed back, so I've had some spare time to get this one filmed. Hopefully the video was really helpful to you all. If you liked it or there's anything I can improve on, just let me know in the comments. Or you could chat to me one-to-one on Reddit, and I've even set myself up on Discord now, so don't hesitate to contact me on any of those platforms should you have any questions, or if you just want to say hi. Or you could even give me a little thanks by sorting me out with a cup of tea. In light of that Hexfire box set coming out, I've got a new technique I want to try on some Rubik Marines, so fingers crossed in the next few weeks I should have that one filmed soon. As always, my name's been Paul, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.